many countries is this now operating in?
So the idea for TechFugees wasn't to own anything. It was to say, right, you know, whoever you are, whatever country you're in, if you have refugees or even if you don't have refugees, set up a TechFugees chapter, get people together, start looking at these issues, co-design, particularly, importantly, bring refugees into the process, co-design things with them. They're the ones who know about the problems.
Yeah.
And then go for your life. And we ended up with 28 chapters all around the world. About roughly, we've estimated there are about 15,000 people have been, involved in a TechFugees event or, had a touch point with TechFugees. We're now a non-profit in France and a non-profit in the UK. We've now been, this year in 2018 to 2015, 16, 17, nearly 3 years later, we're now being sponsored by the Soros Foundation. Last year we had our first global summit in Paris to talk about technologies that help refugees, to talk about design thinking, problem solving for NGOs and charities, workathons, policy groups, you name it. And it's a different way of approaching these
problem,
things.
Yeah.
And it's been fantastic. And what's actually been incredibly rewarding is that here in Australia, outside of Europe, has been the most successful a group of TechFugees chapters on the whole planet. We've got TechFugees groups, and there have been TechFugees events in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane, which is amazing, and all power to the guys who set up the first ones in Sydney, people like Annie Parker and her crew, who I knew from London, luckily, and it's just been fantastic, and I think it's, in particular, it's brilliant because there are refugees in Australia. So, and
and there's a very negative, unfortunately, a very negative mindset around it. And this is a way, as you say, to turn what's wrongly a negative into a positive.
Yeah, totally.
Firstly, I think that's absolutely amazing, and it just demonstrates how the world of technology you can have this overlay of care for other people, and use it as a force for good rather than just making money, so to speak. And effectively, what you're doing is you're future-proofing refugees, by giving them, helping them to thrive and survive.
You're also future-proofing the host society.
Yes.
Against polarization, racism. And everybody benefits. They benefit economically and they benefit socially as well.
And they're more integrated. It's easy to integrate.
This is the way. This is like the new movement of so-called impact investing, which is creating something which is economically sustainable and does good at the same time.
So my last question for you is, given obviously the insight and the overview you have of the world of technology, so many people, when I do the work that I do, are worried about being left behind. And so the reason, we've started talking about future-proofing and creating, conversations like this is about helping people understand what action they can start to do now to build skills for the future, because we know that 65% of the jobs that exist today won't exist by the time my 7-year-old gets into the workforce. So based on what you're observing, what do you think are some of the key skills that are needed in the future? Like, what should people be out there trying to, learn or do to skill themselves up?
Well, the irony about it is that for a long time people have said we should all learn to code and we should all become, engineers. And that's not a sustainable idea, really, frankly. I don't even know how to code. And I work for a technology outfit. I always knew, actually, that it wasn't going to be important for me to learn how to code or to, learn, understand how to build websites or whatever. My point, what I needed to do was to be able to flex and learn and stay ahead, inform myself. So informing myself and keeping myself informed was as much more important than learning a skill which was probably going to become obsolete anyway. I mean, what's the point of learning how to code when AI will be coding? And in fact, they're now having, the people who are creating AIs are now getting the AIs to build software, and nobody knows how the software works. Only the AI knows how the software works. So that's going to happen, and is happening now. important thing, especially in a world where exponential technologies like AI and blockchain will be existing, is understanding that you must stay creative, because computers, despite all of the predictions, won't be creative or for a heck of a long time. And human beings are capable of being creative. There's also going to be much more, the jobs of the future that will maintain themselves are the jobs where humans need to talk to another human. Right? So you don't need to learn how to code to do that. Everybody can talk to another person. That's important.
It's interesting though that you say that, because one of the programs that I keep getting asked to develop is, can you help us teach our people the art of human connection? Because we've kind of it's been eroded over time with technology, and especially like the generations now, the millennial generation would much prefer to connect with technology. And yet that then impacts things like hard conversations, and then how does that, that impacts leadership in organisations and stuff. So it's interesting what you say. It's almost like we have to come full circle back to where.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what the phrase is, but say, for instance, you might call them late millennials. But I think the conversation has circled back again to come back to humans, because we thought that everyone being on a Slack group was going to solve all our problems. Of course, it wasn't. Actually, it created different kinds of issues. So actually, and coming back to how you work as a team, one of the themes that I hear constantly, the word I hear constantly is culture, and that culture is about human beings, isn't it? They say that the people who survive in the future will be artists and entrepreneurs. Well, that's very much at the extreme end of things. But what is an artist? What is an entrepreneur? It's someone who creates, he thinks creatively, who flexes around problems, adaptable, learns how to learn, understands how to learn, not just knowing what to learn, but knowing that to learn is something that they must continually to do. So, it's the only way we'll figure this out is if we keep that in the back of our minds, rather than going and learning a particular skill which was almost certainly going to be redundant in a few years' time.
And it's so interesting because one of the things I constantly teach is start with curiosity. It's almost like curiosity is being bashed out of us, as once we go through systems in our life. And it's almost like we've got to go back to being that, inner child and curious about all this stuff that we know nothing about.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of technology. Jump in feet first. All of the people who have made this technology, they're all, throwing themselves off a cliff and assembling a plane on the way down.
Yeah,
they're all doing that. Yeah. They're all doing that as well. So you might as well do exactly the same thing.
Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.